I'm Dr. Kevin Harrison. Welcome to the Leadership Table Podcast, a place where we bring together faith leaders, community leaders, and elected officials, people who are making a difference in the Central Ohio community. Today, we're honored to have with us someone who is making a difference in the lives of women here in Central Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, there's room at the table, but today I want you to welcome Miss Habiba Bankston. Habiba, welcome to the Leadership Table.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, we're excited about the work that you're doing and the lives that you are touching. But let's get into your leadership journey. Most people, again, as me and you were talking before we even came on, most people will recognize you as the CEO of this organization. But where was the beginning? How did you get into this lane in which you're in right now?
Oh gosh, how did I get into leading a nonprofit organization? My story has taken so many different pivots and turns. I'm trying to think about how far back I should go. Are we going back to childhood, or we talking about the beginning of my career?
I think sometimes, and that's a good perspective. I think sometimes there are things that come out of our childhood.
hmm
A little bit down the road, I'm going to ask you about maybe some of the people who played a role.
hmm
But when did you feel that shift that you wanted to do work like what you're doing with like right now?
Um, if I'm being honest, deep down, I always knew. Well, I don't want to say always. I think when I was in college, I went to the Ohio State University,
Oh wow.
and I started to really dip my toes in community work, volunteering actively in the community, and I started to really see the behind the scenes of nonprofit organizations. So when I was a student at Ohio State, I had the pleasure of meeting Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who, of course, at that time she wasn't Congresswoman yet. She was a senior vice president at the university, and I was so inspired by her. And one thing that she did with me that a lot of other professors, leaders within the university never did when I met with them, she asked me what my story was. My very first meeting with her, she was like, all right, I know we here for a purpose, but tell me who you are and tell me who you are working to be with your time here at Ohio State. And that blew me away. And in that moment, we built a relationship, and she started to pull me off campus. Introducing me to different organizations that she was connected to. And the one that stands out to me the most is the Columbus Urban League. I had an opportunity to meet Stephanie Hightower, get to know her team, and I just actively volunteered. And I started pulling some friends off campus to say, come on, we have to be more engaged. We have to be more involved. And that's really where my love for nonprofit work started, although I've always been committed to community. I was always in search of just trying to figure out what is my purpose and how am I going to give back. And so I think that's the moment or the time when I started to see, like, I could see myself doing this at some point. I started my career at Ohio State, doing student development, leading African and African American student programming. I shifted to fundraising, development for the university. And from there, I had an opportunity to take my talent to L Brands. I worked for Janelle Coleman, supporting the L Brands Foundation and just volunteerism and community engagement for the enterprise. And that is when I learned about Dress for Success. It was one of the many organizations that the L Brands Foundation was funding. And that's where the connection began. I learned about the organization, what it did, the fact that it wasn't just here in Columbus, but it's a global network. And I can't say I started volunteering, but my awareness of the organization was there. Once the pandemic hit, and I was home, just as we all were, working from home, just having the ability to sit down and to really have space to think about what we want to do, what our next moves are, and how can we make sure that we're operating in purpose. I know that's what that time did for me. And I knew then that although I enjoyed corporate, I enjoyed the work that I was doing, I knew that it was time for me to make a shift. And I was actively searching for a new opportunity, but dress came to me. It's funny that you mentioned that Kate Bauer was here not too long ago because she was the board chair of Dress at the time, and one of the leaders in the community that gave me a call and said, "There's an opportunity at Dress, and I think you'd be perfect for it." And it's crazy that although I knew I wanted to work at a nonprofit or eventually lead a nonprofit, I had no idea that that was going to be the time. Because there was a piece of me that was like, am I ready for this? I'm interested. I want to get involved. But is this really the time? Is this the role? Is this the organization? So that's kind of how I found myself to Dress for Success.
I appreciate, you even sharing your story the way in which you did, because we're celebrating Women's Month.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, in the span of 30 seconds, outline some dynamic women.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, Stephanie Hightowers, Janelle Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just some great mentors that I'm sure played a role in your life.
Absolutely.
But when you think about their legacy, do you see yourself kind of creating your own template in terms of, hey, I want one day for some young woman to look towards me the way I look towards these women?
Absolutely. That's something that I'm challenging myself to do.
Mm-hmm.
As I stepped into this leadership role, yes, I had many examples of other women who have done incredible things and have wonderful legacies in the community, but I knew that I had to do it my way. When you have the honor and the privilege of leading an organization, of building a team, of leading a team, it was incredibly important to me to make sure that I was creating a culture that I knew I wanted to be in, a culture that would allow the team that I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with, one that they would have the ability to grow in. I've worked in a variety of different spaces. I mentioned Ohio State. I mentioned the corporate space at L Brands. And although I learned a lot, I engaged with a lot of different leaders. There were some that, I took from that I wanted to I wanted to do some of the things that they did, but then there are some leaders that I can remember. Okay. I don't want to do nothing of what they did. Right. I don't want to do anything of what they taught me, what they showed me. And so all of those examples, even with the women that I mentioned, there's so much that I gained from them, but I always knew that I wanted to do it my own way. And people ask me all the time, like, what's your secret sauce to leadership? And for me, it's authenticity. Mm-hmm. I carry my story into every room that I walk into. Sometimes I question if I overshare, but it's my story that fuels my passion and my desire to give back to community. Right. It's not just a role for me.
Right. Well, and you mentioned too, having worked in alignment with Ohio State and L Brands, making that leap from corporate America into the nonprofit space. When you made that leap, was there any kind of like, okay, did I make the right decision?
Yes. Yeah. How much time do we have?
Because that's a huge leap. Yeah. I mean, I think on paper everybody goes, well, I led with my heart. But then were there some realities that set in that made you say, did I make the right decision? Or perhaps they do it differently than we did in the corporate setting?
It was definitely culture shock. There was some realities that set in, and I had to remind myself, you are not at L Brands no more. You are not at Ohio State anymore. And I mean, I reference those two organizations because when you think of them, they're large. They function like an enterprise. L Brands was an enterprise. And with that, it's a different pace. It's a different mindset. They lead and encourage folks to operate with innovation. And even if we don't have it, how do we go get it? So to move into the nonprofit space where there is a scarcity mindset, and I try to say that with kindness, like an undertone of kindness, but at the same time, it was hard for me. You have to fundraise for every single thing that you do, which is thankfully a skill set that I have, and I love doing it because I don't view it as fundraising. I get excited about the opportunity to talk to folks about who Dress for Success is, what we do, why we do it, our mission, how we support women, and the opportunity to help you recognize the role that you can play in supporting a woman's future. But when it came to, changing programs or elevating how we talk about our work, those baseline things, you would have thought I was ushering in something new and terribly crazy. If you probably would have talked to the team that was there at the time when I first came on board. And one thing I love that I learned from L Brands is innovation. Whether you are in a leadership seat or not, everybody possesses creativity. Just because you've been doing something one way for a long time, that doesn't mean that you can't make a shift. That doesn't mean that you can't talk about your work or execute your work differently. The world is ever changing, so we always have to think about how can we shift to meet people where they are. And as I think about when I got to Dress for Success, it was on the heels of the pandemic.
Right.
I mean, everything changed for everyone, especially in the workforce. And I think women were feeling it in a different way than everyone else. And so I really had to challenge myself to think this is not the organization that it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
What are the changes that we need to do and to make to help us evolve to meet the growing and evolving needs of women in Central Ohio? And that's what guided me. But that level of courage, I got that from the larger organizations and institutions that I worked at. Even thinking about my time at Ohio State, even as a student, it was, what do you want to do? How can we bring it to life on this campus? And if we don't have the money, let's go talk to this other office or this other department to see how they can invest in it so we can bring it to life. It's not, I don't take no well, and I'm still working on it.
No,
Because
but
it's about how you can make it happen.
yeah, but I think when you talk about something that you believe in and you're passionate about, it's not just that you're asking people for money, but you're telling them a story.
Absolutely.
And you're aligning them up with being a partner or a collaborator or even an investor
Yes.
into something that's going to really make a difference.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier about sometimes you get asked a question about secret sauce, and you made me think, I got to be honest with you, this is a little bit left.
Okay.
For those who are watching, they're going to go, yeah, that's him. But this past week, me and my wife take turns sometimes cooking, and I said I'm going to be creative, and I was watching a recipe online, and they fried chicken just in a different way in which I've never done before. The person used mustard and hot sauce.
Mustard and hot sauce.
Mustard and hot sauce, and I saw it in a couple videos, so it had some credibility to it.
Okay.
I did it. I mixed it. I floured it, and best chicken I ever had.
Wow.
Best chicken I ever, not only I can't say had, but maybe made. But when you said secret sauce, when you were putting together your team, were there ingredients that you utilize that maybe perhaps people might have said, well, the person before you didn't do it like this, or maybe perhaps this was a little bit different, but you found it to work for you in terms of certain qualities that you were looking for in leaders who you wanted to be around you?
I think as I was building the team at Dress, because we are much larger now than we were before. When I got to Dress, it was a team of 6, and that includes me. And we're now at 12 with intention of growing even larger. So I immediately thought about the vision. Where am I trying to take the organization? Where do we need to go? What are the opportunities for us to grow? And that is what guided me in how we are building the team. Do we need a chief of staff? Do we need somebody who's focused on data, who's going to help us in really putting the numbers to the stories of transformation that we're telling? Do we need to build a larger development team? I can't raise all the money by myself. Do we need a volunteer coordinator, somebody who can really focus on the volunteer experience? Because it takes an army to run the work of Dress for Success, not just the staff, the paid staff. And so just, again, thinking about what is the vision? Where do we want to go? Do we want to serve more women? How do we want to serve them? And that is really what guided me as I started to build out the team and build out our strategic plan. And that's still what guides me now.
When you think about again, when you first came on board and where Dress for Success is now, do you see it making more of an impact on Central Ohio in terms of the women and their experience? Where there's things that you designed in particular that said, this is where I see the future going in terms of how women could get back into the workforce. And these are some of the things that we need to do.
Um, that is a good question. Do I see it serving more women? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge piece of my vision, the vision that I built in collaboration with our team as well as with the board of directors. When I first came to Dress for Success, I made it a point to spend time with people in the community, partners, volunteers, just anybody I had the opportunity to connect with who was already in the dress world. I would ask them a very simple question: what do you know about Dress for Success? And it was always the same answer: that's the organization that serves women in crisis. Or that's the organization where you take your clothes when you don't want it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. That's what they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a dynamic organization. It truly is a workforce organization that is helping women thrive, not just at work, but in life. We're so much more than shoes, clothes, and accessories. We provide a holistic empowerment experience that's it's not just providing women with professional attire, but also career tools, training, confidence, as well as a community of support that helps her thrive. And even the narrative of that is the organization that serves women in crisis. Maybe that's how we started,
Mm-hmm.
but that is not how the organization is continuing to grow or where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing that I noticed immediately once I got to Dress. Even as somebody who went to Ohio State, I was down the street from Dress for Success,
Right.
not even realizing that this was an outlet and a resource for me as a college student. I am one of the tallest people in my family. I wear a size 12 shoe. I'm not getting professional clothes from anybody at home, and most of my family is in New York.
Right.
Now, granted, my mom is here, but again, two different frames, two different sizes.
Right.
So as I was thinking about professional attire, I had to figure out how I can save up as much money so I can go shopping because I didn't have a resource to support me.
Right.
But Dress for Success is so much more than serving women in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we've been known for supporting women who may have, been incarcerated and now she's trying to get reacclimated. A woman who went through a domestic violence situation and now she's trying to get back on her feet.
Mm-hmm.
That is a part of our legacy. That is a part of, the type of women that we serve. But we're for everyone. Dress is for all women. And that is the narrative that I have really been trying to push and re-educate the Columbus community about. Whether you are a college student that is preparing to graduate and start your career, you're a young professional that's climbing the ladder and trying to figure out where you want to be and what you want your career to look like.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a seasoned professional who's been working for some time, but maybe you want to make a pivot, maybe you want to try a different industry,
Mm-hmm.
we're here for you. Or maybe you were a stay-at-home mom and now you have the opportunity because your kids are older to step into the workforce and start to pursue your dreams and your passions. Dress for Success is here for you as well. And so that is what we've been trying to really push and to communicate. So our goals in serving more women, absolutely. And that is what's driving us. That simple notion of dress is for every woman.
Well, I like the way that you put that because I think that is important for our community to know that it's not just for women who are in crisis, but for women who are just looking to do some dynamic changes, perhaps in their career. Again, whether or not it's a young person that's up on the college campus, or maybe somebody who's been out of the workforce for a while,
Absolutely.
who wants to enter back in, and they may not have the finances or maybe the skill sets,
Right.
but they do have the heart to want to be able to do something in terms of a career change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is an important thing. Let me ask you this: out of all the women who've come through your organization, in terms of being a client, is there any one particular story where you just go, you know what, that was the day I realized that I'm doing the right thing?
Oh gosh. I can think of two stories.
Hmm.
One is a woman I've never met. So we have a program called Success Coaching, and it gives you an opportunity to schedule time with an HR professional, and it's one on one, it's virtual, but you get to have that time to ask any questions that you may have, whether you're preparing for an interview for a new job, or maybe you need support and guidance on, how to ask your boss for a raise, how to
Hmm.
position yourself for a promotion or another opportunity. There was a woman who lived in Arizona.
Hmm.
And there's, of course, Dress for Successes are all over the country, as well as the globe. And I'm not sure if there was one located in Arizona, or if there was, they didn't have this particular program. And so she found out about it on social media and reached out to say, hey, I'm not located in Ohio. Is it still okay that I participate in this program? And we said, absolutely. If you need support, you can sign up. And so she signed up, went through the success coaching program, and you can schedule as many coaching sessions as you would like. And she reached back out to us and said, thank you for giving me the opportunity, even though I'm not located here, to take advantage of the resource that you all were providing. She ended up getting the guidance that she needed, and she got a promotion at work, doubled her salary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And she didn't even live in Ohio.
Didn't even live here.
Yeah.
But she saw the value in what we were providing. And again, every Dress for Success is not cut the same.
Right.
Although we may be under the same umbrella, every city or every affiliate has the ability to develop programs that meet the needs of their community.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go to Cincinnati, you can go to Cleveland. You're not going to get the same level of programming that you'll get here in Columbus. And some Dress for Successes are still fully focused on the shoes, clothes, and accessories and providing professional attire. We believe in going deeper.
Right.
Again, providing that full, well-rounded experience. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that she was able to take advantage of it. Now, the other story that comes to my mind is a woman named Jasmine. She was unfortunately going through a domestic violence situation. Finally had the courage to leave her partner and to pull her kids out of that environment. And she came to Dress. She was not confident. She didn't really believe in herself, and she went through a number of our programs, and she slowly started to build up the confidence to say, all right, I want to go back to school. So she went to Columbus State for some time, and then she was able to transfer over to Ohio State. She actually completed her master's degree as well. She had the courage to just also start tapping into her artistry, and she was able to completely transform her life as well as her kids' lives. And when you think about her now versus where she was when she first came to Dress, drastic difference. The power of creating a space of belonging, allowing people to feel seen, allowing people to feel supported, it's crazy the difference that it makes, especially for women, because the world is not designed, unfortunately, to support us. So although we may be smart enough, although we may have the skill set to do the job, if she doesn't believe that she can, she won't.
But and I think, and I appreciate you telling that story, because I think, my walk away from it is um, the perspective that her children watched on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were there when mom was going through some things. Matter of fact, we were going through some things, but to watch mom come out on the other side, what that did for them,
Yeah.
as well,
Absolutely.
and you're changing a generational destiny, but you're also changing a generational thought process.
Absolutely.
Because now kids are seeing themselves going, mom got the masters, I can go get the masters. I might, matter of fact,
Right.
I might even go on and go a little further than that. And you're creating that lineage that's there.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. Let me kind of bounce in a different direction.
Uh-huh.
Because we talked about Dress for Success, we talked about your role as this dynamic leader, but then you're also a wife and a mother. Then I heard families in New York, mom's here, but like how do you balance it all? How do you mix it all, and hopefully it all lands on the right foot?
Honestly, I try to take it one day at a time. There really isn't a secret sauce. um and also balance is not a real thing. I've come to learn that over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I am a woman of faith. I am grounded in that, and I try to trust God in everything that's coming my way, whether it's being the wife of an elected official, a mom, a CEO, somebody who's also balancing an invisible disease. It's there. Every day brings something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to just make choices based upon my faith,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that at the end of the day we got to get it done. So let's just figure out how to do it, even if that means I'm not doing it alone.
Right, right. And I think that's a great attitude to have because it does become a village together. Sometimes an unseen village, sometimes a
Hmm.
seen village, but people really coming alongside, trying to make it happen. And again, trying to be the best wife, trying to be the best mom, but also make an impact,
Hmm.
and having those people around you. When you think along the lines of your role with this organization, have there ever been any moments when you said this is a challenging leadership crossroad to where maybe perhaps I was prepared for it, maybe I'm preparing for it, but this is a crossroad that's offered a level of challenge to me. Have you ever had that moment?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest challenge or that moment for me has been recognizing that my assignment at Dress is not just to the women in this community,
Mm-hmm.
but it's to the women on my team. I'd say all the time to my board that we have to also focus on the women behind the work of the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to go into it without going into super detail,
Right.
but we have a variety of people on our team. Some as young as 23, some as old as 70 years old. Women who have been through different situations, come from different backgrounds, have experienced different work environments, but also just the levels of support that they have had along their journey. It's interesting to watch how that shows up in people.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to remind myself that I'm responsible to these women. So how can I be a strong example, especially a strong example of someone who operates in authenticity and in grace? Leadership is not about perfection. And that's what I try to communicate to my team, or that's how I try to build the culture that we have at Dress for Success. It's simply about showing up. It's about leading from where you are. Just because my title says executive director, that doesn't mean that I know everything. So how can I provide you with the tools that's going to allow you to know that whether you are a volunteer coordinator, whether you are managing our warehouse of inventory, you have the ability to lead from where you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mindset. And that, I think that has been the biggest piece for me. But just this work has also been pulling at my own personal story and my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who has lived with an invisible disease, I was born with sickle cell disease, had a stroke at the age of 17. And from that stroke, I had to start monthly blood transfusions that I've been doing at Nationwide Children's Hospital since I was 17. And it's been 23 years
Mm-hmm.
since I've been doing that. And I continue to think about the messages that I received, whether it was from family, and it was rooted in fear, but people constantly reminding me of what my limits were,
Mm-hmm.
rather than encouraging me about the possibilities of all that I could do as I get older.
Mm-hmm.
I remember um, even some past doctor's appointments or sitting down with social workers, and they're like, you are probably gonna spend your life on government assistance, so you putting the effort in applying to college and thinking about what career that you might have, put your energy elsewhere, because that's not going to be a reality for you
Mm-hmm.
because of your illness, because of what you're dealing with. And I believe that all of these people were good people, but their feedback to me was always rooted in fear. rooted in, well, I've never seen it before, so how could you possibly do it? And I have had to become my own cheerleader, pushing myself to do things despite the disbelief and the doubt that's been around me. And finding spaces of belonging, creating spaces of belonging, helping people to feel seen, helping them to recognize that even if you don't know how to do it now, that doesn't mean that you can't
Right.
learn how to do it.
Right.
It's about the environments that we create for people. And that has been the thing that's been tugging at me or really stretching me even as a leader at Dress for Success, because I'm creating that for my team, and I'm also creating that for the women who come through the doors.
Wow, that's powerful. I appreciate that. Let me ask you this question as we get ready to, kind of conclude our conversation together. Um, when you look back at your journey, and you talked about your journey, even probably perhaps even before Ohio State, but let's just go back as far as Ohio State. When you think about the legacy that you're creating in this space for however long God might have you in this space, what would you say to that 18-year-old college student at Ohio State when you think about where the journey has gone and now those amount of years, 22 years, and where the journey perhaps could continue to go? What would you say to that 18-year-old girl? What advice would you give her?
Oh gosh. I would tell her to be open, that everything is not going to follow the script that you have in your mind. Allow opportunities to come to you because it's going to blow your mind. Um, I would also I would also tell her that she is going to become everything that she needed.
Mm.
So just keep going.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, Habiba, thank you very much for being here at the leadership table. Thank you for what you do in the lives that you are impacting, not just the women, but I'm sure a lot of other men and families in Central Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us here at the leadership table as well. Thank you for being at the table. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. And to remember to always keep the faith as we stay in touch. Until the next time, God bless.
Boxland Media. Think big.